Wonderful. I could actually hit the right button today. I'm busy typing everything I remember last minute. So good morning, everybody. Welcome. Shannon, am I actually here now?
Yeah, you're here.
Okay, good, good. Just want to make sure my video has not gone away and, lost forever. Good morning, Brew Crew, everybody there in the chat. It's good to see everybody this morning. And let me do something here real quick. There we go. Just want to make sure I see everything going on here. Welcome to another Brew and Activate this morning. Woo, yeah, we are excited to get into today's topic. Hopefully you guys are as well, but there's a crew already there in the chat. Welcome. If with that, Shannon, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great. How are you, Eric?
I am doing superb. Superb. If you know that reference, you can put it in the chat what movie I'm talking about. Um, it's a very good classic Gen X movie. If you know it, shout it out. Yeah, with that, welcome to another Brew Crew, Brew and Activate here. I'm Eric, call sign N1JUR. So if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We appreciate you come hanging out with us this morning. Hopefully you came over from other other feeds or whatever be the case, but thanks again for hanging out. Just kind of wanted to say, for those that are joining first time, and looks like there's one or two there in the chat. We are the Brew and Activate, and what that is, well, we love to explore, analyze, and reconstruct things about POTA, Parks on the Air. So whether you maybe done an activation, maybe you're a hunter or chaser, or you're just curious about the ham radio hobby, well, then you're in the right place for sure. So, every week we try to get together and we talk about the good, the bad, and interesting topics about Parks on the Air and kind of dissect them. And, hopefully we share some of that. And whether your tips, tricks, quirky moments that make POTA special, that's what's all about here for this week at Brew and Activate. So, with that, like we always say, grab your favorite warm beverage or iced, whatever, you fill in the blank, and let's dive into it this morning. So just a couple little housekeeping things that I wanted to do for you guys is we've turned off ads. So definitely appreciate everybody. Keep those super chats rolling in. From time to time, I'm going to, maybe do one of the goals here or there. But, the super chats obviously help, support the show and keep us going. So, just remember those little buttons there. And maybe, if you want to help support the channel and become a member, there's some awesome content for all of our member base that we're always pouring into and love sharing with you. So, head on over and make sure you subscribe, obviously, to the channel. But, if you can help support, we'd truly appreciate it. And we thank everybody who have definitely done that in the past and continue to do so going forward. So enough of those administration pieces here. Yeah. Well, before we start the stuff, anything going on with you, Shannon? How is your, how have you been in general?
Well, yeah, first of all, you didn't even let me introduce myself.
I didn't really
So,
introduce myself either, but if you don't
you
know us, I'm Eric, N1JUR, and she is.
I am Shannon, KC1OHT here in the United States, or 2 Echo Zero Oscar Hotel Tango across the pond in the United Kingdom.
Yes, sir.
And I hope everybody had a great weekend. I don't think we talked about this too much last Friday, but I guess we can talk about it here today. Of course, it was Veterans Day on Tuesday. This past Sunday was Remembrance Sunday over in the UK, a very important day to remember. I was actually able to watch the Remembrance Sunday ceremony from the cenotaph for the first time, thanks to my VPN and BBC One. So if anyone else actually also watched that, feel free to comment in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of inspired me to actually do a POTA this week. It was a rather chilly POTA. There was some snowflakes in the air. So, if you also experienced snowflakes on Tuesday, then tell us all about it. But,
Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
as I was telling you before the show started, I went to, Minuteman National Park over there in Lexington, Concord, where there's actually a grave of some British soldiers that were, killed in the fighting there, and, I paid my respects. I was very surprised, actually. There was another British family there also paying their respects. So, after we had our little 2 minute of silence at 11 o'clock, I went back to the car and did a POTA activation. I got about 30 contacts in an hour, as far west as Oklahoma, as far south as Dominican Republic, and as far east as France. And that was all on 15 meters.
Wow. Well, that's pretty impressive there, and sounds like you're once again way ahead of me again. I failed in that market space and did not get a chance to get out and do POTA's work. Has literally dragged me down to the least common denominator there, and I have not got much out to do POTA. Although I did get a chance to do some other we'll say ham related or adjacent activities there. We'll talk a little bit about that maybe a little later there, but just want to do a little quick plug there. Thank you again, Ham Radio Hef. We appreciate the $4 super chat there, and thank you again for that. And so, yeah, outside of that, I think we've got some awesome stuff that we want to get into today, and I'm kind of all over my map. I'm trying to follow my script, but my brain's just thinking 9 million other things today. So with that, my apologies up front, but either way, let's kind of start this thing off here. We're going to get into our usual and start with our POTA minute here. All right. Am I in the view here? Let's see. See me, Shannon, now, or am I still in the
Yep.
dark?
Nope.
Okay,
You are
great.
good.
Wonderful. All right. Well, this is the POTA Minute, guys. If you're new to this, new to the show, we like to take about a minute to talk about some POTA-related activity or topic or discussion. And so, if you've got a question or you're, something that's been bothering you, or maybe you've got, a general comment that you wanted to share with us, feel free to send it over to us at here for the POTA Minute, and we'll get it integrated. You can post that in our Discord. And you can also send it to me at n1jur.nh@gmail.com. And we'll make sure we dive in deep and, share that in our next episode. So this POTA Minute is kind of, we'll say, a little selfish in nature. So I wanted to share this because it's kind of been, in the back of my head for the past couple of weeks, because if you're like me, life in general has just been a little bit of a, kind of a pressure cooker here and there, on and off. And so with that, it is just basically absorbed any of my free time into, doing POTA activities or just activities in general in the ham radio space. So I've been kind of feeling a little bit down in that sense. And I want to look at it as well, how can I get better about that? How can I do something? And so, if you've been hearing over the past couple of episodes, we started a little thing called the POTA bucket list. And so if you haven't headed over there, or you're just learning about it the first time, the POTA bucket list basically is the links there in the chat. If you want to go check that out. It's a kind of group, I don't know, we'll say group, bucket list. And what it is basically it's a bunch of us that are, that are got some goals. And, maybe you're in the, POTA space and you're like, hey, I want to improve on my kit, or I want to work towards N1CC, or I'm looking for, to be able to, make 10, basically, work towards a rove, or whatever that goals, list is. You probably got that in the back of your head somewhere and thinking about oh, how can I maybe knock off one? Well, I've created this kind of as a space for me, but more so people have kind of jumped in and started adding to it. And so, what I want to do is hopefully encourage you guys, because I think, where all of the craziness that we're dealing with in life, we kind of need some outlet. And that outlet, is definitely POTA for a lot of us. And so I'm thinking, hey, let's try to build a little bit of a community here. Let's try to, share in one another's victories, encourage one another. And so that's where this bucket list kind of was born from. And with it, I'm just encouraging you guys, come join, come be a part of it, come check it out. Contribute your lists. And what I'm going to start doing over the next couple of weeks is I'm going to start reaching out to those folks and seeing if we can do either some like online, Discord channel, or, something more like a month, quarterly meetup or something like that, on either face to face or even just on, Zoom, or here at N1JUR on this channel, and just, kind of just share each other's thoughts, encourage each other, kind of get out there, egg each other on. Because I needed a little bit, but I need to be able to like feel like I'm achieving something and doing something fun and doing it for, a whole bunch of reasons. So I'm hoping you guys can be a part of that. I'm hoping you guys can head on over there. And so that's my POTA minute, I guess, for the week. And I know, Shannon, you just get out and do it all the time. I mean, come hell or high water, you've got, your radio gear on your back, and you're out doing it no matter what. So I applaud you for that.
Well, when I set my mind to something, then, I don't back down. So, even though when, like this Tuesday, I got out there and I thought that I was going to maybe sit at a picnic table and activate, and then I realized it was 33 degrees and windy. I was like, you know what? We're gonna, shift gears here. We're gonna activate from in the car. We're gonna have the mag mount on the roof, and it's gonna be all good. And you know what? It was.
Yep. Yeah. So she is the model POTA citizen, folks. So do like Shannon. I am definitely going to have to take advantage of it. And actually, hopefully today will be one of those days that I go out and do that. So we'll see how it goes. So hopefully, check me on the spotting page. Although I think the storm, the G5 ridiculousness is all done. Is that correct, or is it coming to a near end, I think?
When I checked the solar conditions yesterday, they looked much better. But yeah, so that was actually kind of lucky, right? Because on Tuesday it wasn't too bad. Although there was some crazy QSB. It's like stations that were down in the noise, and then 5 minutes later they were S9. So that was sort of insane. But I think I lucked out on on the day that I chose to do the activation, because if it had been one day later, I mean, we would have just had all those X class.
Radio blackout.
There would have been nothing. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully, positive, knock on wood, then today will be a little bit better. But I did see a comment there with Ham Radio Playground. As you guys submit them, feel free to, either use the same form or email me, or post on the Discord, if you've knocked a few off your list, or one or two. I try to keep that updated as much as possible, but usually give me about like a half a day, usually when they come in, if I've got a time to update the page. It's all a little bit manual process, but, no big deal there. Definitely we'll try to keep, lockstep with you guys. So as you're banging stuff off, let me know, and we'll definitely cross it off the list. And make sure that we update that, because if you noticed, and actually we'll dive into that in a second, is the page has definitely been updated as of yesterday, and we've got a new person we've added there. So, it sounds like it's a good segue here to go right into our, little list we call the POTA bucket list. And so with that, we'd like to welcome Mexico David Zero Old Man Michael. He just posted his activation, or his bucket list, up there. So go check that out. And if you've got stuff you either want to add to yours, if you're currently listed up there, or you've knocked a few off, please email me, let me know. And we can make sure that we get that list updated. So, everybody gets an update there. So good on that. And so let's head back to multi-guest here. So with that, we are going to, have a lot to talk about today with, our topic, because I spent a little bit of time researching and kind of coming up with a better, kind of topic, because some know about what we're going to talk about very well and use it to their advantage, and some are just like, well, what's the purpose of me doing a late shift versus, say, an early shift? and why would I want to do one? So hopefully I've created, a pretty thorough kind of conversation that we can go into and talk a little bit more. But before we do that, Shannon, have you ever done any of those on purpose, like a late shift or an early shift, or you just kind of fell into them like myself?
No, I have never intentionally gone out to seek out late shift or early shift.
Okay, cool. All right, well then you're in for a treat for sure because I think hopefully some of this stuff, will definitely be helpful for you guys today. And if it is, definitely let me know. I also want to throw out there really quickly, like I have been saying since day one, we're building a field guide, and so I wanted to kind of bring that attention to folks here a little quick before we start into today is that over on my website, n1jur.com, this is the POTA list that I have up here real quick. So to get back to, a few people's comments, yep, this is the most update one here. And so as we basically strike stuff off, we will remove from the list. But what I had mentioned earlier, and I've been mentioning for a while, is that we are putting together a field guide. And so I'm starting to go back to my notes and formally kind of create some materials for people to download to be able to use. This is kind of just going to be a kind of a read-only approach. I'm working on building something kind of more interactive as we kind of grow this. But again, it's just all the stuff that I've talked about in past. So like this was what we're going to talk about today. When it comes to our checklist in terms of an action plan that I'll mention. But, those that were they're part of our U.S. test video, here's that planning and documentation pre-checklist that was super helpful that I kind of created for folks that were looking to do a U.S. test with their own gear for the first time. And that's all available up on the website under the field guide. So we'll keep adding to that as we continue to grow this. And there's definitely stuff in the back catalog that I'm still adding to. So fear not, that stuff will definitely be there soon. And, if you get some feedback or comments on it and you want to add to it, definitely let me know and we'll keep working on, making this kind of a useful guide for all the folks in the POTA community. Because I am not going to lay claim to it. I'll house it, I'll maintain it and be the curator per se of it. But eventually I think if it grows wings and grows up, then, we're going to find a new place for it where everybody else can contribute and really kind of just make this something, much bigger for the community as a whole.
I mean, could
So
this be called a POTA wiki?
it could be the problem. My current website provider, I'm a Squarespace user. So trying to integrate a wiki is going to be a little challenging in terms of the interface that can be done. I just have to do a little bit more effort to, coding the back end to get it to all work. So that's the plan, is to eventually have people contribute and make updates along the way. And wiki is a great format for that. So yeah, that's kind of where we were going with that. So, all right. Well, enough of that. Let's head back to our view here. Why am I going here? I wanted to put out a little quick poll here because I love doing polls. I'm a big poll guy. I wanted to see what the consensus is with folks here. Have you done a late shift? Have you done an early shift? Have you even know what they are or how to figure out when, a certain park is a late shift or an early shift? So I'm going to do a quick poll here real quick while we're going into the discussion this morning. And so the poll is really simple, easy. You can use hashtags in the chat there. And all of the the answers are in the brackets for which choice you want to make. And so just throw a pound sign, whatever it is, in the poll there. And this thing will catch up automatically and update as we kind of chit chat here. So we'll go over to our multi-guest screen.
They're calling those hashtags these
Tags. Did I
days.
say pound sign? Yes.
You
Sorry.
did.
Yes. That's how old I am, but just get over it. We were just talking about earlier how we were loading VHS tapes. And if you're from New England, you might know the name Demoulas or just the basket, as they said. So it kind of dates us there a little bit. So as that's kind of going on in the background there, I appreciate everybody participating in the chat. Yeah, so we're going to talk late shift and early shift. And so I just want to preface this is that this is a topic that came out of a listener in our Discord there. So if you have not been over to our Discord, you can definitely head over there and check that out. That is, let me shut this one off. Where is the stupid? There we go. Sorry. Our Discord here. The link's below. Let me post that in there just in case you have or need it in the chat. Is a great place. So it's been really thriving community. We appreciate everybody's been a part of it, and you can definitely head over to our Discord. Why my notes are just all over the map today? Shannon, you have that link now. I have to grab it.
Oh,
For the Discord.
I can
Okay.
grab
All
one.
right. If you can grab it. Yeah, please throw that in the chat. I should just give you a whole list of all those links so you can just add them in as we kind of go here. Because
That would involve planning.
Yeah, it would,
And
but we don't
we
do
know, yeah, we're not good at that.
That's why we live stream. All right. So sounds like so far there is not a lot of folks that, wow, or actually, no, it's pretty almost even. Some have, and some have never done one at all. So it's interesting to see. Let's head over here. So,
So I was just gonna say, and I was typing it, but then now you made me just post that link.
it.
So I'll just
Okay.
say it.
Sure.
So the people that are saying nada, if you go on the POTA app website, and if you go on your profile and look under awards, I bet you'll probably find that you have at least hunted as
Yes.
an early shift or late shift, and you probably don't even know it.
Mhm.
So definitely take a look at the the POTA awards page, kind of scroll all the way down to the bottom there, and I think that's where you can kind of see like how close you are getting to the next awards, and it'll tell you, how many parks you've hunted or activated as either early or late shift. So I bet you've done it by accident and you don't even know.
Yes, that tends to be the response from a lot of folks, is that they never really understand, what it was, and then they realize all of a sudden they start getting these awards for early shift, late shift, and whatnot. And so, yeah, I think we're going to touch upon that for a little bit. Hopefully, it will clarify for folks what those terms mean and why the heck you did it, because it was a thing that I stumbled upon and have used a little bit. I really need to take more advantage of the benefits to it, because it kind of helps you build your skill set and understanding bands and propagation. But at the same time, being prepared for, those scenarios, like what types of antennas you bring, radio gear, and, other accoutrement for, the environment that you're going to be in. So cool. All right. Well, we'll let that keep humming along in the background, but looks like pretty much almost an even split there. So let's go over to my lovely whiteboard session here, which I've got up over and set up here. And with it, so we've got basically, let's start here at the very top. So obviously with the late shift and early shift, it's somewhat confusing for most folks because they don't understand what it applies to and how it applies to a park. But what we're going to do is we'll define this first. And so let me kind of give you the, English Oxford dictionary term or POTA dictionary term of what we think early and late shifts are. And so to start things off, obviously, here's kind of the definition of early shift. And early shift really is just the start of the activation window. And we'll get into where you can find that, how you can locate that really in a bit. But it's basically when the start of the activation begins at the park, or it's usually the local sunrise time frame of the local park at that time. It's not based off of your time zone per se, but it's when sunrise kicks in, and it usually runs up until about mid afternoon or so, a little bit after that. The other option, or the other, is your late shift. Late shift is obviously the latter portion of the day. So that's, 9 times out of 10, afternoon hours, after usually lunch tends to be kind of that break in the divide. And again, this is very much defined, in the park criteria, which I'll refer to in a bit. And it depends on obviously a lot of other variables. So that saying out loud seems very muddy for a lot of folks. It's like, well, is it this? Is it not this? Is it this? It is. It's a loosely fitted kind of time frame, and it's really only defined by what the park it dictates. So, where you are physically in a time zone, where you're physically, in the terms of the time of day, all determine whether you're an early shift or a late shift kind of structure. So with that, we've kind of got this challenge that we're faced with. And so let's pull up my quick screen share here. With the park, in the park's app database, every park's got a definition. And just recently, I think I can't remember exactly when they instituted it, but it was, I think, in the past couple of years, a little bit after COVID or when they did their last major, kind of enhancement. They included this early shift and late shift field in the park definition. And let me caveat or preface it this way, is that not every park has it defined. And I don't know why that's the case or where that information can and should be updated. But I think the intention at one time, the POTA community was hopefully going to allow some kind of way to update this from a community type effort. But I don't know where that went or how, or if it just kind of fell off to the wayside. But part of that was this early shift and late shift component. And what it really provided is that it gave you a UTC defined time by the park. Now, who created that or who enters that? I'm assuming it must be the park coordinators, because I could go to, this happens to be a park I activate often when I'm in the Andover area in Mass. But if we go to my Kilo Rail Trail Park, which is in Nashua, you'll see that it has based on location specific times coming soon. That's been like that for who knows how long. So it's like, why is it that some parks have it, some don't? It's a mystery to me. I don't know. It's something I'm going to probably reach out to the coordinators. Maybe they can provide a definition a little bit more about what that means. And who updates that stuff. So just know that, buyer beware as you're starting to search for your parks and you're trying to figure out if your local park that you've been activating for a while, what the late shift time frame and early shift time frames are. They may not be defined in that, in the profile. And, we'll get that answer hopefully soon. And maybe, I'll be able to give you guys an update in a future Brew and Activate. So, just know that caveat wise is that, you might not have that information, but, using the rule definitions that I gave before, you can determine, when you do your activation or when your activation's, actually done by the logs will dictate, your early or late shift pending on the time frame that the log is noted in. And I think the system handles some of that. Because I noticed that obviously when I go to the rail trail, my awards have reflected, late shift versus early shift kind of thing. So I know they're definitely pulling that data. It just, for some reason, some parks have it, some don't, and no rhyme or reason or logic to why. All right. So let's, anything in the chat, any questions so far, Shannon, that I missed before we kind of keep plugging away?
Nope. It looks like, people are just mentioning that the POTA page has solid definitions of early shift and late shift based off of UTC. So, yes,
Yep.
early shift and late shift is based off of UTC. I actually just did a little clicking around on the map myself on a few different parks. So, maybe Eric is going to go into this, but it does look like it may be based off of the US time zone. So, it looks like all the parks that I clicked on that were in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, the early shift started at 0700 UTC
Yep.
and ended at 1300 UTC. And all the late shifts started at 2300 UTC and ended at 0700 UTC. So there's only about 10 hours in between there, right? Where you're not in any kind of shift.
Which is so that was always the confusing part before they even started to put this piece into a park definition is like, I can recall on my hand having conversations with Todd when we were like, are we in late shift? Are we early shift? When's that work? And then you'd have that gap that you're like, well, what is that? Like, what's the limbo? Like, where does that put me at that point? So, there was definitely I think this was an attempt to help that. And it's, one of those things that, that will hopefully improve along the way, because, having more people asking these questions will definitely help improve updating their database and their FAQs and that type of stuff. So, yeah, you're definitely right, Shannon. There is a current clear definition based off of, what they've done in the POTA docs. And so for those that might not know what we're referring to, if you actually just go up to docs here, here is their Parks on the Air database, and you can actually just search late shift here, and you'll get a slew of definitions. And so let's see, I don't see late. Yeah, they have the awards, but oh yeah, okay, so they have the definition here roughly, which if you're a first time POTA activator, you're like, what the hell am I reading? But as if you're a seasoned activator, you tend to know how to be able to deal with the nuances of, when it says 6-hour period from UTC time. Well, a lot of people work local time. So how do you do that translation? Well, you got to go figure that out. And, that'll help you along the way, because in essence, let me throw that out there. Sorry. Thank you, Ted, for that, or Todd. Sorry. Let me go grab that right now. So,
Yep, I did post the link,
you
but
did?
it might not have posted as a
Oh,
link
yeah.
because I was not a
Yeah.
moderator. But it
I
looks
just
like
added you.
now I am a moderator,
I
so
just
maybe
added
I
you.
can post
Yes,
it
please.
again.
Yes, like we said, we fly by the seat of our pants here, so we'll work out all the details. So, all right, back to the focus here. So, yeah, let's get off the embark page here and go back to where we were. Okay, let's just go real trail here. Okay. All right, so we kind of define what that looks like. So at least we have some foundation to work from, and that'll vary as you learn more to when you start getting out there and activating. What those timeframes look like for you, because you're going to have to take a moment every time you go out and activate, especially if you're just doing like myself, where you have only a brief sort of amount of time to activate. You're going at any time of the day, so those times of the day are going to dictate obviously whether you're in a late shift or an early shift. And a lot of times I'm not even considering when that time of the day is, except for maybe what the conditions or the propagation might be, as to what bands I might want to operate. So we're hoping with this, a little bit of an education here, that'll help you expand your scope when you're out there activating, of like, oh, well, okay, what do I want to consider when I'm doing a late shift? What do I want to consider when I'm doing an early shift? And provide you a little bit of a kind of a mental checklist that you can use to go through and understand, what the best approach is to doing, an activation, but more so a later and early shift. All right, so let's go into some of the pros and cons, because we obviously know what the definition of a late shift and early shift is. Well, like, why would I want as an activator to do one? Well, the easy approach here, and let me just pop over to the whiteboard again, is that let's kick this out of here. Is that we'll talk early shift first. And so let's talk kind of the top three when it comes to why I would want to, or what the pros are for me doing an early shift. Well, simple and kind of, high level is that, there's better availability of, rare or hard to reach parks. And I'm saying we're talking early shift. So where you might go to, a very busy active park, going very early in the day provides you less people interaction, provides you more opportunities for setups and configurations. And you're not having to worry about, if you go in the afternoon trying to find even the simple things like a parking space to be able to set up. That is always a tough thing, especially if you've got a very busy park and a park that, is a great for obviously activating. You've got lower radio noise and congestion, which is a problem if you haven't paid attention that, say you're activating from a park bench and you're on the radio and all of a sudden you hear this truck drive by and you hear their alternator whine in the back of the radio. That's, one of those things that'll get picked up a lot. All those atmospheric noises, all of those localized noises from vehicles and people during the day, a lot of that gets almost falls off, and you almost get a better noise floor and the whole ordeal. And then the last one is that, it might be cooler, especially in the summertime. It'll definitely be a little bit warmer in the fall, winter time because the sun's getting up a little sooner. And you might have a better opportunity, like I mentioned before, for setting up for the best conditions for your antenna, your radio, the park bench, and that type of stuff. So those are kind of the three top things that I was thinking of that would be the pros for early shift there. Anything maybe I missed, Shannon, that you want that we should throw in that list, or I think we got it covered.
Well, as Ham Radio Hef mentioned, there are awards based off early and late shift. And we all, as ham radio operators, we love awards. We want that wallpaper printed out and covering our shack walls, right?
We do? No. I have a frame for that. I don't like the paper all over my walls.
What?
I have issues with curling of the page from gravity taking over and that type of stuff. If you ever want to see my shack, I mean, you can't see it back here, but I've got two photo frames that basically roll through my QSL cards and roll through all of my POTA awards. So I display them, but I just don't display them the paper form.
Well, that's no fun.
It's wonderful
You
because I
might
get
as well just have a digital picture frame,
That's
right?
exactly what it is. It's
Oh,
literally a digital picture
digital.
frame.
Okay, well, there you
Yes.
go.
So I just I send the PDF to the digital frame, and like I'm actually just looking at my last park to park or the Rhino that I just did for my Rove, and so yeah, it's there and rolls through and reminds me of how great it was to get out and activate. So yes, we will touch base with the awards. We're skipping ahead a little bit, but no problem there. All good. All right, so let's talk obviously the cons a little bit. So yeah, everything's got a pro, everything's got a con, but when you're talking early shifts, maybe early shifts, depending on the types of bands you like to operate or the modes you like to operate, there may be fewer contacts. It might be a little harder, or you might be just coming off of a G3, solar condition, and it's a tail end, and it still might not be fully clean, clear of the the view. You might have to deal with obviously working a little harder to make a few more contacts. Propagation. Obviously, I mentioned that with the G storms that we've had over the past couple of days. That can definitely, affect you a lot. And so you might have to plan for other modes or other methods. And, definitely in terms of doing an early shift, you are going to have to deal with certain bands not being available based off the gray line, and a number of, things like that. So this is kind of where that technical understanding comes into play a little bit more, and using that to your advantage as an activator, for those bands you normally might not use. You might want to stretch yourself a little bit and try making, an attempt to use some bands that are, better suited for those, kind of late or early shifts. And then obviously the big thing, around here in New England, we don't really have that as much, although there have been one or two parks that I've had to hike in, but never really had to been removed from or asked not to go into a said park, is definitely park access. It's always good, obviously, and I'll throw the caveat on to be a good POTA citizen and not park in places that your vehicle will be towed or, block traffic or anything like that. Kind of keep that in mind as you do that. But that definitely can obviously impact how you get out there and activate. And have you run into any of those scenarios when any of those activations stand in with, obviously propagation and contacts are, a thing we all deal with?
Right. I mean, you definitely want to be using tools like the maximum usable frequency, to check and see, what band is even going to work for where you, not only where you are, but you also want to look at where you want to talk to. And, that is just, ham radio 101, right? That doesn't just apply to parks on the air.
Yep.
But,
Yep.
if you're doing an early shift activation and the sun, especially right now, right? We're getting to be winter. The sun is not really up when, some of these early shifts start.
Yep.
Um, then, you want to be looking at, you're probably going to start your activation on maybe 40 meters or 80 meters, depending on the sun and the maximum
Condition. Yeah.
usable frequency.
Oh, those three-letter words again. Don't be talking the muffin luffs there. Most people that is a thing everybody remembers studying for when it comes to the test, but then when they finally get out in the field, they're like, "What's that again? What do I need to know that for?" As Todd says all the time when it comes to studying for his extra. What do I need to know that for? Yeah, you need to know it. It's an important important tool. Which we should definitely have a topic around that. You know, talking about muffin luff and a few other things and how you use it to your advantage because there's we need to get some smarter people on to help us with that process. But yeah, there's really some good stuff. So okay, well let's talk the late shift. So obviously we did the pros and cons of an early. So let's do the pros and cons of a late shift, just so you might get a good sampling of this. All right, so you've got the late shift, and so we'll talk pros here. And these are kind of the top three that I came up with. So obviously late shift, you're going to be dealing with more operators on the air. It's a guarantee, pending on obviously if you follow the late shift schedule here in New England, you're going to see from like 1 to roughly 9, 10 o'clock, or a little bit earlier than that. Sorry. And you're going to get more hunters depending on the bands, the conditions, what mode you're using. It's just kind of an almost guarantee. Most people end up, it's not as popular, say in the morning, but it also may be popular in certain areas of the world, depending on who you're working. But if you're US based and, you're here activating, yeah, you're going to find that there's going to be a lot more chatter on the band and a lot more people out there to make contacts with. The better crowd drawing for hunters. This is definitely more of a hunter thing than it is, say, activator. But as an activator, you get the residual benefit of hunters wanting to hunt you. How many have gone up to the hunting or up to the spotting page and seen, on a given day, 40, 50, sideband activations just alone on 20, And so there's definitely a field ripe for the picking, as they say, for hunters when it comes to late shifts and being able to make contacts for those folks. And then, you've got more bands available to you in some cases during the late shift than you would say maybe in the mid-morning parts of the day, and an example of that would be like, if I'm doing an early shift, I may not have 40 available as prevalent as I might want, but 40 is going to be a lot more available in a late shift. 20 might be just coming up, or 10 might be super active already, but very inactive in the later hours of the day or more towards the evening hours. So knowing those things helps you be a better activator, both for the early and late shifts and just an overall activation itself. So any of those kind of tools you play with, Shannon, at all, like in your mind, like when you're out there activating, like, so you did the Veterans Day activation, were you thinking what bands are going to be on, or were you just like, I'm just going to try whatever I got and go with it?
Well, I mean, you know me. I almost always like to start on 10 meters where I can. And, I always check my maximum usable frequency, and 10 meters was open, to Europe and the United Kingdom. And, but, I actually wanted to hunt around and not really call CQ. I wanted to hunt park to park, but there wasn't that many spots on 10. There was only a couple. There was none on 12, and there was only a few on 15. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I did kind of end up, I got one park to park in Texas on 10, and then I ended up switching to 15. And I ended up just calling CQ and making my contacts that way. But
Right. Yep. Yeah, you definitely hit the nail on the head. I mean, in essence, even though the spotting page might give you like a indication as to what's out there, it might be the actual reverse opposite of that. Of like, I've been on the spotting page and seen 40, 50 stations, and I've heard maybe 5. So
yeah,
it's like that kind of ordeal that you have to, know those two key things that Shannon's been mentioning and saying over and over again: the muff, the luff, the conditions. All of those things help play into where you are currently, at that moment in time versus the rest of the world and what might be going on. So, um,
well, and not only that, so, when you think about it too, Veterans Day, the day that I happen to go out to do the POTA, it's a Tuesday, right? So some
mhm,
people are still working. It's not a holiday for everyone. or other people maybe going to other Veterans Day ceremonies. So there
Mhm.
just might not have been that many people out there, activating on that day at that particular time. But if you say go to do an early shift or a late shift on a Friday night or a Saturday night or a Sunday morning, you may actually find that there's more people on at those times because, people tend to be not working on the weekend or,
Yep.
um, what have you.
Very much so. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, these are, you know, I'm going to paraphrase this is that this is stuff, if you're brand new to say, a ham radio and the hobby and you're just getting into POTA, this is stuff that Shannon and I have just kind of learned by osmosis from others, but more so just as a hands-on kind of thing, that just got us to that next point of like, well, what am I missing? I need to, do XYZ to get better, to understand, exactly what Shannon just explained. So it's one of those things that don't feel like you're, if you feel like you're just like kind of lost in all this process, start somewhere, and eventually those moments in time for the education, for your education to get better is going to, occur very quickly. We both have learned this, along the way. And how long have you been doing POTA?
I've been doing POTA since 2023, summer of
Okay.
2023.
All right, so I'm right around 5 years now. So yeah, I mean, in essence, in terms of all those 5 years is definitely giving me a lot of understanding and skill. But I've also gotten to places where it's like you get frustrated and you're like, why is this not going the way I want it? It should be like, Sadly, I came off the solar high, and so like now I'm having to learn how to like not dismiss the fact that 20 meters is always busy. I'm going to make contacts all the time. Kind of mentality that you lock in your brain that this is like shooting fish in a barrel, to now you have to work at it. Now you have to spend a little bit more time understanding, solar conditions and times of days and all of that stuff, which is very much why I think, late shift and early shift is a really good thing to have under your belt and trying to get better as an operator. All right, so let's obviously talk about the cons to running a late shift here. The one thing that definitely, obviously, we all know well is crowding and QRM, the two words that on any given day, especially if the bands are good, 10 meters. Although 10 meters, we don't have to worry about it so much. It's more like 20, the popular bands, where we have very limited frequency space, and not a lot of opportunity to kind of spread out and expand our elbows. Crowding is definitely a challenge. So like you have, a net that's 3 kilohertz above or below, or maybe you've got a DX station from the Dominican Republic running 1.5 kilowatts, 3 kilohertz down from you, and they're just overshadowing your small little 100-watt barefoot activation. That can very much affect how you perform in, doing your activation, no matter what the shift is, but more so, late or new. And so, yeah, you have to definitely deal with that more in the evening hours. Like Shannon mentioned, the people are more home, they're, in front of their radios, they're doing, less work and more, hobby kind of focused. Logistic stress. I couldn't come up with a better way of naming this, so I kind of went the business route. There is some stress to, especially if you're a new POTA activator, managing a lot coming at you. We all, love the pile up or talk about the pile up and how great it is. But if you've never done it and you've never managed it, yeah, it can be stressful, and it can definitely be a challenge juggling your radio and your logging and your conversation with people and picking up call signs and all of that, or dealing with the stress of like, hey, you finally found this open frequency, and guess what? Another person comes on, gives them, your contact, you make a contact with them, and they go, oh, can you get off this frequency? We're going to be doing a net in 20 minutes. All of those kind of avenues play into it. And then on top of it, you got all the band condition issues that you have to deal with. So fading in 20 meters happens a lot from time to time. You can have a great 5.9 signal, and then it falls in the way below the noise floor, and you're like, what the hell happened? Where did they go? Do I get them in the log? Do I not put them in the log? And all of those stresses. Any of those scenarios kind of play out for you, Shannon?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Talking about, I figured so. Yes, the right. The
I'm busy with
roses and
chat right now.
unicorns. Roses and unicorns. That's all Shannon does whenever she activates. There's nothing ever bad.
You gotta take the good with the bad, right? And you
Oh, you
just,
don't.
when the bad happens, you just let it roll off your shoulders. That's kind of my
And spoken like someone who's activated for quite a while. Yeah, so if you're not having the 3-letter word, as we all say, the word fun, then, what are you doing this for, as they say. Uh,
exactly.
yes, for sure. And so the last piece is where I love, and I really wanted to make this my first one, but I figured it was better at the end. Weather and comfort. I hate to be cold. I hate to be wet. I hate to be, any of those scenarios where I'm not that's taking so and zapping so much of my energy to putting that energy towards, the radio contacts and having fun and playing radio. I will spend probably more time in that department, I think, preparing and sadly, I think I spent more time checking the weather, figuring out what it's going to look like when I'm in those areas, and then having the appropriate backups for my comfort levels than I am about worrying about whether I remember to bring my coax or bring the right antenna or, have a tuner for a random wire kind of thing. And so I'm learning how to change that a little bit, but yeah, you'll never find me not ready to have comfort when I'm doing an activation.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's like I said, on Tuesday it was pretty cold. So, I just ended up activating from inside the car, which, is something that you just kind of have to do in New England at this time of year.
Yep.
And in terms of crowding, as WD0OM said down in my channel, always have at least one plan B. So, if you guys remember when I did the POTA activation at Fort McClary State Park there in Maine, and I didn't even realize it was the North American QSO party. So I could not find a space on 20 meters. I don't know if I could find a space on any band to even call CQ, right?
Hmm.
So I ended up just hunting those North American QSO party stations as POTA because don't forget, like, nobody ever has to know that you're at a POTA, right? You do not have to say CQ POTA. You do not have to give your park number. All you have to do is make contacts. So if you just start at, wherever your voice privileges start, and just scroll up the band and just give your call sign and a signal report. And if they're doing a contest, give them whatever exchange. If they need a serial number, give them number one. If they need your state, give them your state, but you don't ever have to say a word about POTA. So you can still make contacts even if you can't find a space to call CQ, even if you can't find another POTA park to contact at park to park. You can still get that activation.
Yep. Yeah, and there seems to be a little chat back and forth about the one thing that when we were talking comfort was obviously comfort for yourself, but comfort for the environment you're in. I know Mike had made a comment really quickly about bugs being a pain there. Yeah, here in New England, we starting pretty much maybe May time all the way through summer. Yeah, we deal with all of those ridiculous mosquitoes, the gnats, the mayflies, all of that. And then depending on if you're in a, say, wildlife area, you deal with all of the marshlands critters that kind of go with that on top of it too as well. So having some of those things, are definitely useful. Thermocells, having some DEET, all of those things I usually carry with me in my truck so I can always at least go back to get it or remember to grab it out of the truck when I go on said activation. So yeah, those are definitely important things to pack too as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's just basic, basic outdoor stuff, Think about what you would bring if you're going to go on a hike or what you're going to have if you're going to go camping. I definitely ran into that bug situation back. There was a fox hunt a few weeks ago. It was somewhere in Ipswich, I think. I can't remember the name of the park. I don't know if it was a POTA park or not. I don't think it was. It was
Mhm.
some kind of conservation land that was owned by the town. But the amount of mosquitoes there was insane. And mosquitoes just love me anyway. And I did not have any bug spray. But wearing, long pants, socks, your pants tucked into your socks to stop, ticks or
Yeah.
bugs. Long sleeve shirt, you know, protects you from the sun and also, protects you from bugs as well.
I mean, Shannon doesn't have the problem, but yeah, having a hat, suntan lotion, us bald guys know the issues. So
Yep.
all of that stuff. So yeah, definitely. That's actually probably a good topic to maybe talk about sometime in the spring when we roll around. Like, what's your POTA kit or your adjacent POTA kit look like that you have packed with you on top of just your radio gear and everything else like that. If that, something people would be interested in, we'll schedule that. But all right. So, well, okay, we kind of talked the pros and cons about some late shift, early shifts there, and definitely appreciate all of the feedback there in the chat there. So, okay, you get to the point now, like, all right, let's decide what you're going to do for your next activation, and we're going to talk practical stuff here. So, let's, these are some of the things I want to elaborate on a little bit. So, first thing first, obviously check the park hours. So like some states, BLM land, that type of stuff, they will have park rangers that will, patrol the area. So, be aware of the times being at a park. I know Todd, W1STJ, he had shared that he was doing an activation down in Missouri because he was down there for the day, and the park was after hours, and he had like at least 2 or 3 patrol cars come by and ask him what he's doing, and one of them actually at one time I think made him leave. So knowing your park hours and the local activity is important, obviously, when you're thinking about an early shift or a late shift, as we mentioned before. The one thing with an early and a late shift there that we may alluded to, maybe you didn't pick up on it, is that you're always kind of aiming for maximum contacts. I mean, obviously in an activation, you don't want to leave a park without getting at least 10 contacts, but you should also be thinking in terms of like, how can I maximize my contacts? Not with the purpose of like, contacts or bust, but how can you take advantage of conditions, the propagation, what you have for setup, the park location, whether you might be in a valley, whether you be on top of a mountain. All of those things play into how you're going to maximize your contact ratio with people, and whether you're going to be dealing with the pile up for 4 hours straight, or you're starving to get one contact every hour. I've been there, so it's always a challenge for sure in all of those goals. So check your park hours. Make sure understand the local activity. Spend a little time doing that little research. And then the next one is obviously, like, I know Shannon, this is a tough one because she just kind of goes and, she's prepared most of the case, but consider what your goals are. Like, are you just doing this because you get some spare time? Are you doing this for, you want to put this as maybe it's your first Atno and you want to put this on the map for yourself? Or maybe you're working towards a kilo or an N1cc, or you're a paper chaser and you're trying to, maximize your, contacts. These are all tools that can help you kind of plan for that, because, late shifts, early shifts, all of those, most people may not think about when they're going out to do an activation, but if you consider those pieces along the way, you'll find that you'll be able to maybe get to that end goal, whatever that goal is. And again, back to the POTA bucket list, maybe those goals are on your list. Like, I know a few folks have the N1cc there. I do. Those are things that late shift and early shift can help you, maximize and getting closer to those many bands, many contacts kind of scenario. The one thing that Shannon definitely alluded to that I'm a big proponent of is obviously plan for your hybrid approach. Like, perfect here in New England. Well, it was freaking cold out. It was 33. She did not want to be outside. She could have prepared for it, but in essence, you got a great vehicle, turn the heat on, throw a mag mount on the top, go to town. There's nothing wrong with it, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was sort of, we talked about, a couple weeks ago, the winter weather, how to keep warm in the winter and do POTA activations. And I think I mentioned, winter is a great time to do a POTA rove because you can, get 10 contacts at one park, start your car up, get it all heated up, get yourself warmed up, and drive to the next park.
Very much so, yeah. And if you've got that time for sure to be able to space it out. Yeah, you can definitely take breaks in between your activation and warm your car up and unthaw the windshield if it's that cold. You don't want to attract the wrong people thinking that they're you're doing something weird. So yeah, kind of keep that for your own safety too as well. I think I very much try to keep my views clear because you never know in a park scenario, especially if you're in more of a remote area. You want to keep safe. So
Well,
always remember that.
especially, late shift, if it's
Mm,
dark,
yeah.
you want to make sure safety is key. So if you're going out there, if you're going to be by yourself, if you're going to be, whether you're in a car or sitting at a park bench, uh, make sure you're looking around, being aware of your surroundings. Let someone know where you're going and how long you plan to be and when you plan to be back, because safety is number one, right? And we don't want any of our ham radio family, our family, getting hurt out there on a POTA activation.
Yep. Well said, for sure. Little ounce of prevention goes a long way. So, all right. Well, so yeah, maybe in terms of planning for what I call a hybrid approach, set up early. Here's a good example of some of these. Set up early, and then maybe as you're activating, if you're going to go for the day, you have the opportunity to schedule to do that. Well, then take a little bit of a break and then switch to a late activation, or maybe if you've timed it, you can set up a little bit early, start, don't start until like maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes, to, the point of you can at least make some contacts or 10 or 12 contacts for the first late shift and then roll over or the early shift and then roll over at the, whatever time frame locally into your late shift. And example was I know Grouch was down in North Carolina and he was activating on 40 meters. Same thing. He started a little early and then literally he realized, oh, I'm going to roll into the late shift. And he was able to, make basically two separate logs and get the contacts for both. So it's one of those good planning strategies. Definitely helps maximize the number of contacts you can get. And it kind of falls into, optimizing that time to your best benefit and, not stressing yourself out. Back to that whole, like, let's try to manage your stress levels here. So, shifting that around and helping, yourself and your activation is going to benefit you in the long run. And then, the other ones I'm thinking of is maybe you go out with another activator. Well, there's no reason why you can't do a split. So I can do the early shift and, my best friend can do the late shift, and basically you're still getting those contacts, but in essence, one person's in control of the activation as a primary activator. I mean, you still obviously both have to, do a dual op scenario, but you're not, managing the whole entire thing on your own. So think of those, kind of those terms, how you can spread the load, how you can take the best approach to both making this fun and helping all the stuff that we kind of alluded to in this, our, comfort levels and antennas and propagation. So the next one, factor and propagation and the bands. Well, we alluded to earlier that, obviously Shannon goes out, she checks the muff, luff, she checks propagation, she does all of those things. How long does it usually take you?
2 seconds.
Okay. So for me, I spend like max 5 minutes if I do it. And a lot of the times it's very helpful. I mean, you obviously know what you're going to do because you can take that information and as you're driving to the site, you're like, oh, okay, I now I can set up for 10, 20, and 15 or whatever. And, you kind of use that to kind of plan out your strategy while you're en route. Is that kind of how it works for you?
Yeah, I'll look at the conditions before I decide if I'm going to go out, or, if I already know that I'm going to go out, like what happened on Tuesday. um I'll look when I'm sat there at the park and just see, okay, what's the maximum usable frequency? All right, it looks like I'm good on 10, so I can go ahead and start on 10. If I looked and it looked like that it's not open on 10, but I have to start on 15 or 17 or 20, then I'll just know that's where I need to start and I'm not going to waste my time with those other bands.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually what I was gonna, get to that you already touched upon. Is like you're in the mornings. Well, 40 and 80 are probably good bands for you to kind of start with. Maybe you're in the afternoon or, right in that middle gap, 20, 17, 15, 10. Those are all bands that you can, use to your disposal. With that, it helps you get better with your equipment and knowing how to tune your antenna for 10 meters or 15 meters or whatever. Because how many of us, and I'll raise my hand first, when you first got your vertical or whatever wire antenna, or more so just in the vertical world because you were like, oh, I got to go buy a vertical. It's easy to set up. You figure out after busting, your head open 3 or 4 times to try to figure out how to get the damn antenna right in the, 1-to-1, SWR, because everyone's like, oh, it's got to be 1-to-1, and, as we all learned eventually, no, it does not. You could still do less than 3-to-1 and still, have a good activation. But how many times have you ever gone back to your antenna and set it up for anything else? Like a lot of times I go out with Todd and Todd's one Buddy Pole Pro is set for 10 meters all the time. Never changed. Hasn't done anything else because it's been good for him. But if you ask him to change it, he's like, oh, well, I got to go through that whole process of figuring it out. So understanding, the balance of bands and modes, and then your equipment help kind of, build into that whole factor and propagation process. So the last piece is kind of staffing and assistance. And, it's more so, if you do these activations on your own, this obviously doesn't really play into it. And so you might have to just change your strategy around a little bit. But, you've got people with you, you're doing a dual activation with somebody else, work if you've never worked with them before, have a little discussion, who does what, who gets the antenna, who sets up the log, who gets, the station, table configured, that type of stuff. Have those discussions, do a little planning, because it'll go a long way. But more so if you've got people that you've activated with constantly over and over again and you've developed a rapport, you're going to find that it only becomes like second nature. You go with somebody that are like, oh, well, they've done these 3 things automatically because they just know, hey, that's my role. That's what I do. And you get it done and you activating quickly. And, you do that. I do that a lot when I go out with Paul, I go out with Todd, and we pretty much, know what our roles are. And then we just do them. And, it makes it that much smoother. We don't have to worry about, hey, did you forget this? Or do I have to remind you to do this? Or, whatever. That doesn't always work when you're alone, but you can do that same strategy in building out your POTA kit, making sure you have all of those components and those little gotchas that you might need when you're out in the field because you don't have enough paracord or you don't have a weight. What do you use? Kind of that type of stuff.
Well, it's all about getting into a routine, right? A POTA routine. So, like when I went out and activated with Paul, the first time he set up everything and I just stood around looking pretty basically. But, it was all his stuff. So I don't know. He has his way of doing things. But then the second time, I knew how he liked to set up the chairs and the table. So I set that stuff up and then he set up the radio and the antenna. And then, sort of the opposite, he took down the radio and the antenna. I folded up the chairs and the table and stuff for him. But, even like when I go and do my own POTA activation, I have my routine of, first I'm going to set up the antenna. I'm going to lay out the Faraday cloth. I'm going to put the antenna on top of it. I'm going to run the coax. I'm going to set up the radio, set up the battery. And then, you kind of do the opposite when you're taking everything down just to make sure that you don't miss anything.
Yep.
And, when you kind of do things the same way every time, you get faster at it too.
Very much so. Yeah. More efficient for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I don't like Grouch, unless he's already set up in advance, which he usually does because he knows me. Because I'm just like, hey, let's just go at it because he prefers a certain antenna, he prefers his certain radio and setup, and I'm fine with it because it's more like he's welcoming me into his home, his POTA home, and it's just like, hey, just set up, you're good to go, and all I have to do is fire up my logging, and we're off to the races. So. Whereas Todd, it's like, it's just in that moment. And so, nothing is usually set up prior to that. And, he and I are rolling in at the same time. And it's literally, it's mass chaos, but it gets done and, it gets solved and we're on the air. And, knock on wood, most of the time we're, making contacts. So, yeah, it's definitely interesting. So with that, it kind of, begs the question, we've obviously alluded to some tactics, but I wanted to kind of just, more solidify this a bit for folks. So, let's talk some tactics here. And so here are a few that I came up with real quick. So yeah, let's talk target windows. So say you're going to try to make this attempt going forward in your next activation. Well, think about how you want to establish that plan. Meaning, are you going to split it? Are you going to do a late and an early? An early and a late? Are you just going to do a late only? Kind of know that before you get into your park activation. Again, if you're just doing a park activation, a lot of this stuff will just kind of almost be second nature because you're not really thinking about it. But put a little thought around it, and it might actually help you optimize a little bit, on the back end when it actually comes to making contacts and making the best, use of the bands and the frequency space that you've got available to you. So, find what those windows look like, know what they are, and then how it fits into those park hours, because that's the other avenue. It's like, at least in New England, I think we've got the benefit that most of the time you can just park and walk into a park without too much effort. The national parks, I haven't had a negative experience, but a lot of times I would just be able to just go in and set up or operate from a parking lot kind of thing, and never really be bothered about the process. But, definitely knowing that hours based off of obviously the activation too. You don't want to be caught. You want to make sure that obviously if there's a sign posted on the parking lot says park is closed after 11 p.m., that you follow that sign. Don't be like showing up at 10 o'clock and expecting to stay there till midnight, 1 a.m., because probably more than likely you're not. And don't even go as far as like, hey, I'll park farther down the road in one of those inlets, because you will probably get towed. You will probably be picked up by the local police, that type of stuff. Or like my experience was, I went to do a park row, not a park row. I went to go activate Rye Beach State Park with my family, and that closed at 7, but like when my wife is like, oh, let's just go do an activation, I just want to go watch the ocean and you can go play radio, we went there. Well, Rye Beach State Park, they closed the gates and you can't get out of the facility whatsoever. There's no way to get around it because you're surrounded by 3 areas of water. So the only way is out the same way you came in. And I was like, I saw the sign, and the sign said, oh, park closes at 6 p.m. kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's the middle of it's summer. No one's going to close the park gates at that time. Well, apparently it happens a lot. And thank God the local, police are, not jerks about like giving you a ticket. So, we set up and I activated for an hour, and then we got back in the truck, and then I pulled out, and the gates are literally closed and locked. And like, it's not like you can move the gate out of the way because they literally bolt them. Long story short, I had to sit there, and thank God the local police were driving by. They saw me sitting at the gate on the inside. He kind of, gave me a little bit of a lecture there, but, let me off. And so pay attention to that stuff. That's what I'll throw out there for folks to give you a little bit of advice. So,
Well, not just because of, you might get locked into the park, which obviously we don't want that to happen, or you might get a ticket because that's a bad day. But we want to be good stewards of amateur radio, right? And we want to be good stewards of POTA, because if we go around and we're going into the parks when they're closed and causing all of this trouble, what's going to happen is it's going to ruin it for the people that are following the rules. And then they're going to say, you can't be doing radio here. And we don't want that to happen.
yeah,
So,
no,
the rules are there for everyone and for everyone's safety. So let's go ahead and follow the rules, even if, we might not always agree with them, like a beach closing at 6 o'clock in the summer. That sounds a little silly to me, but the rules are the rules, and they do apply to you.
very much so. Yeah, and as Ham Radio House says, obviously having that relationship with the park rangers can definitely go a long way. But along Shannon's lines, be a good steward of ham radio, because you guys all are ambassadors in some form or fashion. So don't mess it up for the rest of our future generations that are out there activating. All right, so we'll talk about setup optimizations. We probably don't have to get into too deep on this one, but keeping it simple is, I think, the best takeaway for this. Don't overcomplicate it. Try it, but don't try to do everything all at once. Try to do a little bit as you kind of learn how it all works in terms of how understanding time zone shifts and propagation and all of that stuff. But, at the same time, use it as a way to build your equipment base, your antennas, the types of antennas you bring, the coax, all of the backup stuff, the radios, the tablets, the power, all of those things, the comfort, making sure you help build that process because I don't know about you, but I think this is kind of the new thing where 20 years ago, ham radio operators used to maximize their shacks and the biggest, the ham who dies with the most radios wins kind of approach. Well, I think the new world is, how many POTA bags do you have and how much gear do you have everywhere scattered in your vehicle for the purposes of your POTA activations? I think that's where when, most hams die, we're going to be emptying out their cars and it's going to take months to empty out their cars because they have so much stuff of gear and attachments in there, and that'll be the new ham shack kind of approach. So, just a thought. All right. Well, so let's talk spotting and announcements. This one's a tough one. There are ways, and actually, I'll give Keith credit, AC1RH. If those folks have hunted him before, and we've had him on Live Free and Ham to talk about his Eagle Island activation. If you want to check that out, head over to Live Free and Ham. That was an awesome discussion. But spotting, he is. There are tools and methods out there that you may not know. That if, say, like you go to a park and you have poor cell service, well, there are other ways via RF that you can spot yourself outside of asking a hunter, which is the simplest way to say, hey, can you respot me? There are tools that you can send, via over RF, your spotting information. There are many ways, there are many, tool sets that are there and available. Might be worth a discussion in future Brew and Activate about what those look like and how to deal with them and, what you can do. And so that might be something to talk about. But yeah, see what those are to your advantage. Don't always assume a park always has great cell service.
Exactly.
And then, when you're, most people don't do this, but I'm subject to it as well. How many people have used the activation page on POTA.app? Do you even know what that is?
Are you talking about how you can schedule your activation ahead of time?
Yes.
I
Yep.
do know about it. I have never used it.
Okay. Now, I've used it once. Don't know if I ever got any residual good thing benefit out of it. It doesn't hurt to do it. If you're, say over on the spotting page, and we'll just head over there real quick, just so people, if you've never seen this before, let's just go to screen share real quick here. If we go over to the spots page and go to our menu here, and I gotta remember where it is.
Yep,
It is
Ham
Add
Radio,
Activate.
Ham Radio Hef says he uses it all the time. And Mike N2MAK says that he schedules ATNOs and very rare parks.
That would be an atno.
Okay.
Come on, get with the lingo here. So let me see here. Spotting. I just need to.
This coming from the man that called a hashtag a pound sign.
Yes, I know. So yes, so as Hef said there, you can always go over to the Parks on the Air page, click on Add Activation up the top, and you'll be presented the time frame. The challenge for me was always like, I don't always know when I'm going to do an activation, but if you've got a pretty good system and you're going to be there, you can provide a range, hours, time frame, day. And I think I don't know how far in advance you can spot this. I assume from now until, next year, if you, I guess, wanted to do that. I don't know if someone's ever done that in general, but you might be able to say, like, if you've got a POTA meetup or something like that, and you wanted to post that out there, that might be useful for me. And then you can, provide your frequency. Now, it's not a guarantee. I'm going to put that out there because I've done this and I've never been able to get that frequency space because, again, no ham owns the frequency space. So, you might post it there, but when you get to the site, you might be on a different frequency. Don't sweat it. It's kind of one of those things that, like, it's an initial, hopefully people can find you kind of in the general area. So if you're going to at least start on 20, put yourself in the middle of the general band kind of thing. But, know that, and hunters know that, even though they see this, you're not going to be where you say you are because it's just almost impossible to predict kind of that scenario, with, propagation and activity and that type of stuff. So, you can definitely, use that to your advantage, and, help get the word out, especially if you're, not having, the cell service, or any ways to be able to spot or don't have a method to spot yourself live out on the spotting page there. All right, back to our whiteboard. Okay, so the other thing is that and it's not really a thing per se, but people do it. We've had a few folks post on our Discord here over at Live Free and Ham that they're going to be out in the POTA channels activating. When they may not have it, or they're going to be heading out the door. That's just one way to kind of generate more interest, especially if you're looking for people to hunt you locally. Use the tools that are available to you if you can, but ultimately, fear that most people or know that most people are going to have to go hunting for you, depending on once you finally get there and activate. Last one is QSO management. This one we alluded to really quickly, and it's kind of the last one here on the list. Higher activity, band activity is going to dictate how much you make in terms of contacts. Difficult solar conditions are going to dictate how long that's going to take. And the other piece of that we didn't really allude to is, how are you dealing with log management? How quickly are you plowing through those pileups? So, are you working them to your best advantage? Are they taking longer? Are they taking less? All of the pileup is a unique animal in itself. And I would love to probably have a talk about that in the future, because I think it'd be kind of cool to see how people handle that differently. It's one of those things that, is very much, a different, it's a style thing, but it's also a management technical, it has a small little technical portion to it that I think is important. And something you have to develop is basically what I'm getting down to. A bottom line is that if you have never done a pile up, just go out and activate first, try that out. Go with somebody who has done a few activations and study them, watch them, ask questions, and then give it a shot yourself. You will not get it right 100%. Out of the gate. I fumbled, I made mistakes. I screwed up, simple things like, throwing my call sign after saying QRZ, that kind of stuff. You'll figure out what that rhythm looks like and develop your own rapport along the way. And then the last piece, actually, we already kind of touched upon that. I won't beat that horse to death. All right. So any questions there in the chat at all before I kind of just give somebody a quick example?
No, we're just arguing about whether or not it's a pound sign, a tic-tac-toe board, a octothorpe, or a hashtag. So maybe that needs to be our next poll.
Man, we're gonna become the polling channel, if anything.
Hey, whatever brings more engagement, I say.
Okay. Yeah, well, we'll have to talk offline about that one. All right. So let's kind of dive into, again, an example of what I think, and this is a very rough one. I didn't really fully flush this one out. But I'm going to post kind of maybe what an example, 2-shift activation kind of looks like. And again, this is, your mileage may vary, your style and your approach and your equipment and all of this stuff will play into it. But let me kind of share what I think, and give you a reference to kind of work from here. So if we've got a 2-shift activation, and this is playing both early and late shift together. So let's see if it rolls off here. Let me drag this over. All right. So, it's going to scroll off the screen here. So I'll read it as anyway. So, all right, we're talking about early shift. So we're starting early shift on a given day. And again, this is on your local, based off your local park. So you get up, set up, you get configured. You're going to start at around 8:30 and you're going to run till about 11:30. Well, you've got basically to your advantage the bands. At that point, whatever mode you're going to be running will obviously improve or change the scenarios to your contact quantity and frequency. Start on 40. If you're CW op or your sideband, those are great bands. The gray line is changing and shifting. You'll probably get depending on where you are located, more DX, either West Coast or East Coast. You start to work stations that are on the long path and that type of stuff. And it's going to give you more of a regional footprint of the, if we're talking United States here, you're going to see a lot more of the United States based off of where that gray line shift is. And again, this goes back to understanding gray line and muff and luff and all of that. You're going to just set up a quick kind of camp. I would say FT4, X, which when I mean that, I was thinking like an FT1, 20, and again, whether you throw power at it when you're running barefoot or you're a QRPer, that radio can, be whatever it needs to be or whatever your standard POTA radio is for yourself. Bring one or two antennas. I can't say this more than enough. Bring a dipole, bring a vertical. If you can bring a coax switch with you, then the more power to you. You can switch between those two antennas to be able to pick up more, contacts either way, depending on if they're weak signal or, strong signals. And then, keep your power, maxed out at 100 watts. I know there's been some conversation with a few people that I've had about, amps and that type of stuff. Let's start, with 100 watts tends to be a good feel. But if you're a QRPer, then, start there. Go with what is comfortable is the best way to approach. Goals, obviously, want to get a baseline log, get established. You'll probably be somewhere in the range of 20 to 30 QSOs, depending on the conditions, depending on what you're doing. And, you're going to easily make a lot of contacts very quickly to be able to activate the park. At that point, look at the setup, figure out what bands might be good. At that point, take a little bit of a pause. Maybe you want to shift, depending on the time frame you're in and you're getting more up towards the 11:30 time frame. Shift to one of more of the, the newer, not newer bands, one of the other bands like 20, 15, 10, kind of look in those spaces. Start maybe 10 would be a good, at that point, 10 is probably already starting to get warmed up, starting to come alive. Especially here in New England, 10 is very, active from mid mornings to just about mid afternoon. And then it starts to fall off a little bit. Explore those bands, take a break, call QRT for a little bit, go out, bring your lunch, whatever, get some water, walk out, stretch your legs, take in the scenery, breathe in the fresh air, do all of those fun things that you're very much, not paying attention to when you're in the heat of the activation. Just take a pause, kind of assess what's going on, how you're feeling, what's the thing looking like. And then now this is, the point where you can restage, reset, roll right into your late shift. In that point, now you've got a lot more bands available to you. You've got, some of the, activations on the 40 you can still take advantage of, but, 20, 15, 17, those bands are all going to be available for you, whatever mode you're running. So take advantage of them, pop around, basically hunt as a, activator, figure out where the space is that you want to set up for home, and then go at it and try it. And then don't be afraid to change things up a little bit. Like I've done a few activations where I started on 10 and then we were like, oh, well, let's go to 20 for a little while. And we go to 20 to try to reach those folks that, maybe just out of the skip zone kind of thing. And then, pop back to 17 or 10, play around with it. That's why having two antennas is important, because you can, if you have a wire antenna, you can switch to the wire antenna, and now you've already dealing with the harmonics of 15, 10, 20, that type of thing, especially if you've got like an end fed, that's set, cut to 40. You can definitely use that to your advantage. And the vertical might take a little bit, more of a tuning scenario to be able to change the band, unless you've got a Mad Dog coil with the Lazy Dog attachment, which, check out my video if you're interested in see how that thing works, because that's where the gold is. And then, from there, work on your CUSA count. And this is where those CUSA counts are going to change. They're going to get bigger. I don't know if the numbers here that I was thinking about was going to get to that level. There are sometimes it can. I know I've worked with talked with activators where those numbers can get really big fast, and you can maximize your park coverage. So at that point, you can start kind of playing the game for collecting grid info for your mapping and awards kind of thing if you're a paper chaser. But ultimately, the strategy that I would suggest is that you can focus on the high frequency bands that have great propagation at the time. Again, knowing all how to read that information, where to look for it. And then, be ready for the pileup, because it will come. You will become very, very proficient at managing that over time, just by experience. And then, have, people help you along the way. if you've got a partner with you to managing calls, dealing with the, hey, did you hear this kind of thing scenario, and then just have fun with it. And anything how does that sit with you, Shannon?
Yeah, that is the main thing, is have fun with it. And, it's, definitely not unrealistic, from 8:30 to 11:30 local to be able to get, 20 to 30 QSOs, even on SSB. I mean, look at what, I just said on Tuesday, an afternoon random day during the week, I got, 30 QSOs within about an hour. So, very easily doable on, even on a off band like 15 meters.
Yep.
If you're on 20 meters, I mean, you could very easily have a pile up because, for some reason, those POTA people, they love 20 meters, but just like, our good friend, Oscar Echo 4 Juliet Hotel Whiskey there just said, don't forget to check 10, 12, 15. There's so much more POTA activity that is starting over in Europe and the United Kingdom. They are really looking for the North American POTA parks to add to their, hunter logs
And
and
they're going to
their
be
park to
persistent.
parks.
They're going
Yeah.
to be persistent because they are in their night cycle at that point. So they will hang in.
And I'm sure that Mike, who is in the chat, is very happy to see the mention of the 12-meter work band for Work Band Wednesday. So,
Okay, sorry. I just saw someone say Live Free and Ham site's down. I don't think it is. I just was on there this morning. Let me just double check there. No, it's up for me. We all working. There's the URL just in case you need to go to it. Since I saw that in the chat there. Yeah, I think all that's great advice for sure. And definitely useful, to take advantage of, because you have a lot to your benefit as an activator that a lot of people don't really pay attention to or know of because they get comfortable. Like I refer to 20 meters as my blanket as I was a little kid. Remember how you had, as a baby, you had a blanket that was like the size of, the U.S., 50 states map. And then by the time you got to like 9 years old, it was like this big, that's kind of how we refer to 20 meters. It's like 20 meters is so huge. And then we finally get into POTA for so much that it's like we only really stay in 20 meters because it's comfortable.
yeah, it's like your safety net,
Exactly. So, yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Thank you, Ham Radio Hef, for letting me know that, because that site is definitely alive and well for me, at least on my end. So, all right. Last thing I just want to throw here. Obviously, that was a good example, and we'll go through this pretty quickly because I know we're running up, into some time for folks, and I'm sure people's employers are like, "What are you doing? Why aren't you doing work?" So here we go. So here's a couple of common pitfalls to avoid here, and these are just kind of stuff that I kind of came off the top of my thought process as I was doing this. Is first one is a overloading one shift, and this goes back to our 20 meters kind of thing, or the 20 meter approach. Spend time not worrying about maximizing the contacts as the only thing. Know that, your log is, you really only need 10 to make an activation at the park. And really, that's totally fine because, as I alluded to in our example, once you get to the late shift, you're going to find that you're going to have a lot more opportunities to make a lot more contacts. In essence, and all of those contacts as a whole goes towards the credit of the park as your overall number. So know that you don't have to stress, trying to optimize it or just solely focusing on one thing over another. The other one is inadequate power or misconfiguration of gear. This is a problem a lot of us still struggle with. This is know thy equipment. Bottom line, use US test. If you weren't there for our Brew and Activate episode where we talked about using US test, go back in the replay there, check that out. We have a great guide over on n1jur.com that goes over stuff that you can do for US test to be able to know your gear, understand how to be able to, set up the radio, how to get it tuned, what the frequency, how to adjust your frequencies as a basic, but more so, how do you use your filters? How do you read SWR? How do you know whether or not you're maximizing power? Know your, whether you have chokes or need chokes or should have chokes. And then how to adjust like simple things like your vertical antenna. Like don't just set it and forget it. Use those other bands that antenna can do. Take advantage of that, know how to tune that, know how to be good and proficient in those sense. And then the logging is always a struggle for a lot of people. If you're like Shannon, paper works perfectly fine. Use it if you think so. If you prefer that, have that as a backup, because there are times that my logging application, I thought I charged the night before. For some reason it wasn't. And I had 16%. And by the time I got through the pile up, I had no percent. And then my log in laptop shut off. And so having a backup, you can just pick right back up and not skip, miss a beat.
And I hate to say it, but for those of you who might be on the POTA Facebook page, I did just see a post from a ham the other day who said something like, "I'm sorry, my logger crashed on, this POTA activation, and I lost all my logs. If you contacted me, please email me and let me know the day and time so that I can, put it in or whatever." And I was just like, oh my gosh, that is a bad day. And that is, one reason why, I don't know if I will ever switch from my pen and paper log, because I don't want to be that person that, sadly loses my entire log because something crashed.
Well, the something crash part tends to be software related. So we'll get into that some other future, conversation. I have been, like I said, in those scenarios where my laptop died, but the log never got lost. But I don't. One thing that really bothers me with that comment is like the activator asked the hunters to provide them information. That in my mind is like a big no-no, because the hunter's job is not to make sure that they made a contact with you. It is your job as an activator. So be better, figure that out. Have backups to your backups, and you'll be in a better scenario for it.
Well, a lot of times, if you're a hunter, you might not even log
I
the
don't log them.
contact.
I
Now,
don't.
I love to log. So if I'm logging from, if I'm working from home, then I usually have QRZ open. And if I'm just making casual QSOs, I just log directly to QRZ, because I want a record of everybody that I've talked to. But yeah, I mean, so hats off to that guy. I hope he I hope he was able to get enough contacts to figure out his
Yeah.
activation for that day.
And if not, then hey, just chalk it up and learn how to move on with it. It's kind of one of those things
Yep.
that you don't have to keep your station log, all the time at this point, as per FCC regulations. But Roger, I'm with you. I'm a lefty. I have doctor's handwriting. Anybody who's seen my handwriting, like obviously here's an example of my handwriting. If you can actually see it, like you can't even see it. Like that's just crappy. It's horrible.
Listen, I got my paper log
Yeah, that
right
nice. Yeah,
here.
no.
Okay,
Well,
but listen, being a lefty is no excuse, because
yes,
I
it
am
is.
also a lefty. And I was just going to type to Roger, but I'll just say it now. Nothing improves your handwriting like having to improve your handwriting. So, I highly recommend using a pencil. I use a mechanical pencil, or as they call them in the UK, a propelling pencil. That way, I don't have to worry about having a pencil sharpener on me, and it's in pencil. So if I write something not so neatly, I can erase it and kind of rewrite it. But yeah, when you're more mindful about what you're writing down, that can definitely help.
No. Yeah, we'll have another story about that time and all of the nuns that, I still have indent marks on my hand from poor handwriting as a lefty. All right. Plug it away. Poor logging discipline, which we already talked about at length here. Making sure you optimize that and learning. Once again, that's another tool, learning how to do it, and then learning the backups to those tools. Last one is spot fatigue. And so this is just more so, spotting fatigue in yourself. A lot of us are like, and I've been witness to it several times, is like they get so excited that they're in the middle of the pile up and that they're doing an activation for 4 hours straight that they've lost track of time. And then they're wondering where the heck all of their energy got zapped. Well, yeah, recognizing that, refueling, taking a breaks, totally acceptable, definitely important for the process, especially if you're going for that long-term kind of goal. And so, yeah, and don't forget that this is not a one and done thing. This is a one and do repeat many. So learn how to be able to, as they say, POTA is a marathon, not a sprint, although some days it feels like it's a sprint. Learn how to be able to pace yourself, learn how to be able to kind of improve your endurance over, both a late and an early shift activation, and it'll go a long way for sure. And help hopefully minimize some of the mistakes, because if you're not paying attention to how and why you're making those mistakes, well, let's solve the mistakes problem and it will help everything else kind of get itself worked out. All right. So, So with that, that's kind of this in a nutshell. And hopefully it was helpful for you guys, because I know I learned a lot in the process of putting it all together, and very much, have learned where I can tweak the knob a little bit in terms of my activations. And I'm going to start thinking more along the lines of, how and when I'm doing my POTA activations, where they fall in the late shifts, and then paying attention that much more as to band conditions and the tools I bring with me. And you're fine. Your POTA kit, it might be 35 pounds now, but I'm sure after this episode, it's going to be 45 pounds, because you're going to be adding a few more things to that kit to help yourself in the long run. And so, with that, it's hopefully helpful. I've taken, like I said, back to this whole community effort. Shannon and I obviously love sharing our stuff and talking about POTA in general. And so I think the one thing that needs to come from that is obviously, building that community of that field guide. So I've already put that up there. It's up on n1jo.com. You can pull this down as a text file. If there's stuff I need to add to it, or you think you need to add to it, send me an email, let me know, hit us up on Discord. Again, if you need to get access to the Discord, here's the link again. I got that available. I found it. And feel free to come join us. Come hang out in the N1JUR Brew and Activate channel there. But feel free to peruse everything else. So Liffrey and Ham Discord, because that's what it is. It's not N1JUR specific. Has got a lot of different people, a lot of different takes, and a lot of awesome stuff. So head on over there, check us out, be part of that community. And we'd love to, continue to build upon this. And so that field guide was going to grow and keep growing as long as this is still going on forward. And it's going to be freely available at the very end to everybody and anybody who might want it. And, we're going to definitely capitalize on Shannon's idea of building a wiki so more people can contribute on the fly and really add to this. So, all right. Excellent. We got a member there. Thank you, Whiskey Delta Zero, Old Man Ham Radio. Appreciate you being a member. And thank you again for everybody who gave super chats today to help out. Again, this was a commercial-free live stream here. I've turned that off. So, definitely help us keep that way. Your super chats and your memberships always help us, keep that going. And so with that, hopefully you enjoyed, this stuff. I know it was a lot. I don't know about you, whether you feel like your brain's like ready to explode, Shannon.
Never.
No? Excellent. Good. I love it. So, we love to, keep this going. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning in to Brew and Activate today. I hope you enjoyed all of the stuff that we talked about today, and we'll definitely be picking this up again next Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, as always. So, as we like to say, make sure you like, subscribe, definitely subscribe to Shannon's channel if you haven't yet. She is definitely, very much a part of this community here, and is a wonderful support, and we love having her on here. And she's, we're going to give her more, admin controls here. So she's not like going 9 million ways and 6 ways to Sunday, as they say. So, definitely do that, and be part of the community, because, without you guys, we're just sitting here talking to ourselves, and we can go have coffee because we live here in New England. So it's not like we have to be in front of a screen to do that, but we enjoy having you guys on to be part of that. All right. And as always, like I keep forgetting, but they are very integral, check out all of our sponsors because those guys help support, N1JUR here. And hopefully we'll get them to do it with Shannon soon. So make sure you check out Mad Dog Coils, Reliance Antenna, and Spool Tenna. All of the discount links are in the description below. So if you want to save a little bit of money, check those out and go over and support them and just let them know you heard, about them on our show. And, until next time, as we always say, keep your radios on, the PTT down, and POTA on, folks.
Yeah, for sure. POTA on. And Mike also mentioned that next Friday, you're going to get a double dose of us because not only is it going to be our regular Brew and Activate, but it's also going to be
Yes,
Northeast Ham Radio Happy Hour live stream next Friday, the 21st. So
that is true. Yep.
be ready. You're going to get an early shift and a late shift of KC10HT and N1JUR. So
Very much. Yeah, true. Right. I didn't even think about that. we'll have to paper log that one because I don't think there's an actual official electronic log format. But all right. Well, with that, 7-3, folks, and we'll catch you later.
7-3 POTA on, guys.